Okay, we will go ahead and begin. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Joseph Kearney, as most of you know, and it is my privilege as Dean of Marquette University Law School to welcome you to this truly special annual occasion. We will this afternoon welcome into our Pro Bono Society a substantial number of Marquette law students, or for a term more immediate for some of them than for others, a number of future Marquette lawyers. We have done such an admission or induction ceremony for a long time. Indeed, the Pro Bono Society itself was established during the tenure of my predecessor, the late Dean Howard B. Eisenberg, who passed away in 2002. The number of inductees has increased over the years, and you, the students who have made these contributions, really inspire us. Of more recent creation than the induction part of the ceremony, but also now a tradition in its own right, is the way we begin, which is to say the Posner Pro Bono Exchange. Through this, we honor the memory of the late Gene Posner, a member of our class of 1936, who was a lawyer, entrepreneur, and philanthropist here in Milwaukee. It is right that we should honor his memory today because much of our pro bono work has been supported by a multi-year gift of the Gene and Ruth Posner Foundation, which is led by Gene's grandson, Josh Gimbel, a lawyer with Gimbel, Riley, Guerin, and Brown here in Milwaukee. In particular, the Posner Foundation has supported the expansion of our Office of Public Service, led by Dean Angela Schultz and Director Katie Mertz. They have led us not only in preparing for this particular event, but far more broadly in working with our students over the course of the past year on so many of their pro bono placements. So I want to begin with my thanks to them. We would also like to give you a sense of Gene Posner. I had the privilege to meet Gene several times after becoming dean before his death in 2005 at the age of 90. I was able to get a sense of the man, of his commitment to Milwaukee, of his belief in the role of lawyers, perhaps Marquette lawyers in particular, in helping individuals solve their problems, whether those individuals were replete with resources or were instead in need of other service. At the same time, without doubt, my knowledge of the man truly does not compare to that of his grandson, Josh Gimbel, and so we have asked Josh to say a few words, whether in remembrance of his grandfather or by way of introduction and welcome. So please welcome Josh Gimbel.
Thank you, Dean Kearney. I see some familiar faces around here today. They're working with you at the Justice Center or otherwise, knowing you from other places. Welcome and congratulations to you. My grandfather graduated, as the dean indicated, in 1936. He put himself through college and law school during the Great Depression. I think that gave him a really profound understanding of what it was like not to have money and not to be able to enjoy some of the things that some of us can enjoy. And one of that is the ability to hire and retain legal services when we have legal problems. So I think he had a sympathy for that early on. And 60 years of practice later and many years of helping people who could not afford lawyers, he set an example for me, his grandson, who graduated from a different law school down the street, but also my father who graduated from this school and my brother who graduated from this law school. So he set in place a long history of public service and the importance of pro bono legal services. As you know, lawyers have a monopoly on providing legal services, and we have a duty when we become lawyers, which you will do shortly, some of you, and some of you at other times in a couple of years, will have that duty to do so. And my grandfather, if he were alive today, he passed away 11 years ago, next month, as a matter of fact. I always know that because I'm here in the almost springtime of Milwaukee every year. Someone said it might be springtime next Wednesday or something, so I'm still hopeful. But if my grandfather were alive today, he would be so impressed with the number of students who have dedicated themselves to providing pro bono services while still law students. and he would think that that sets you on pace to do so when you graduate. So I think that you are all destined to do that, and hopefully for years to come you can tell Angela about your great successes in your pro bono endeavors. So anyway, I just wanted to thank you and congratulate all of you. I would like to tip my hat to Angela and Katie for all their great work that they have done over the years. And of course, Mike Goucher and our guest, thank you for being here and doing the things that you do. Just one other note, I happened to be looking through the old records of the Posner Foundation this morning, and I came across minutes of a meeting from 1986, and that was the second year that they started to support the pro bono initiatives here at Marquette Law School. So it's a long record of support, and as long as I'm involved, you can be assured that we will continue our support. So thank you all and congratulations.
Thank you, Josh. I'll have the affidavits and declarations drawn up as the afternoon goes on. You can sign them before you leave. We are very grateful to the Posner Foundation and to Josh in particular for its support. Let's proceed to the Posner Pro Bono Exchange itself. For this, our guest is Martha Bergmark. Ms. Bergmark is the founding executive director of Voices for Civil Justice. This is a national organization serving as a communications hub for civil legal aid. It is a network with more than 700 spokespeople that seeks to tell the story of what civil legal aid is and to convey its important role in assuring equal justice under law. Ms. Bergmark is deeply experienced in this field. For example, over the course of a decade, she started and led the Mississippi Center for Justice, a civil legal aid organization whose mission is to advance racial and economic justice. The Mississippi Center began with a single desk in a spare room in a law office. A decade later, it has an operating budget of more than $4 million and a staff of 35. Ms. Bergmark remains a board member and senior counsel. Her leadership of Voices for Civil Justice marks a return for Ms. Bergmark to Washington, D.C. She had previously spent 15 years there as an advocate for equal justice in a number of positions. These included service as president and executive vice president of the Legal Services Corporation and senior vice president for programs at the National Legal Aid and Defender Association. The National Legal Aid and Defender Association, for a point of local interest, at least to those of us with long memories, is the organization that the late Howard Eisenberg led from 1979 to 1983 before going into legal academia. In all events, we want you to know much more about Ms. Bergmark, but she is right here, as is Mike Goucher, our distinguished fellow in law and public policy. So let me hand it over to Mike, and as I do, please join me in welcoming to Milwaukee and Marquette Law School, Martha Bergmark.
Thanks, Dean Kearney. Thanks, Josh Kimball, again, and congratulations in advance to all of our students here today. We're delighted to have Martha Bergmark with us. We were comparing notes earlier. She started off in journalism at one time. And came to your senses quickly and decided to do something else. But I want to begin by talking about sort of what led you to the work that you've done throughout your career. And I'm struck by your ties to Mississippi, where you grew up. What was it about Mississippi that made you want to do the things you've done?
Well, I grew up in Mississippi at the moment when the civil rights movement was happening. And that was really a formative experience. My parents didn't start out being civil rights activists, but they became that as school teachers in Mississippi. And so I was involved as a teenager. I got to see both journalists in action, some very courageous people who really brought a message of what needed to change in the South. And I also saw the civil rights lawyers who were just mainstays of the movement. They really provided the legal pathways to a future that we now live in, which is not where we need it to be. you know, the Mississippi Center for Justice works every day to continue to try to fulfill the legacy of the civil rights movement. But it was that set of connections to people and to those events that put me on a path to law school.
You went north and were an undergrad at Oberlin and then got your law degree at Michigan.
That's right.
But you went back home after you got your law degree.
I did. I left thinking I had escaped for good. That was a very interesting childhood, but I was out of there. But it was pretty quickly the case that I just felt really pulled back. So I did finish at Michigan in '73, and my husband, who I met in law school, and I went back to start a civil rights firm in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
What kind of work did you do there?
We did civil rights work. We changed the voting laws. We battled for fair housing. We worked on cases to secure employment rights for minorities and women. And we had a great time at it and had 2 children, and suddenly it was really home. We were there in Hattiesburg for 14 years. I started the legal aid program, the first civil legal aid program in that part of the state. Was one of our projects while we were there.
So there was a tremendous need at that time. And yet, all these years after you worked in Washington, as the dean told us about, you went back to Mississippi again. What had changed? Certain things had changed in that period of time, but there was still a great need you found.
There were 2 things, I think, that sort of pull me back. One was just the gravitational pull that Mississippi does have on me. That's just a fact. The other thing was that in the mid-'90s, there was the legal aid in America has been characterized by these ups and downs of commitment to it or not. You know, federal funding for legal aid began in the late 1960s. And it was up and down and over various eras. In the mid-'90s, there was a particular moment of peril for federal funding for legal aid, and there were dramatic funding cuts and dramatic restrictions were put in place. And Mississippi was left with really only threadbare capacity after that. So there was an opportunity to go and start an organization there that would begin to fill that gap. And it just felt like that had my name on it. It was an anonymous donor stepped up to fund the first year or 2 of the program, and I just had to go do it.
Yeah, and who did you hire to help you do it? Because your staff has grown down there substantially.
It has. There were 2 of us to begin with. We had money for 2 of us at one desk in a spare office. And, you know, selling need for legal help in Mississippi is not that hard. The need is very great. What's actually hard is selling the idea that there's something you can do about it, you know, that it's not just going to be a waste of money just an impossible scale of need enough that everybody sort of shies away from it for that. So that was really our task, was to craft a message that would both convey that there was a great need for legal advocacy in the South and in the Deep South, in our most challenged part of the country, but at the same time that there were solutions that we were offering. So that was our task. And we were able to succeed at that. Actually, it was Hurricane Katrina that was both a curse and a blessing for us, a dramatic event, you know, a terrible natural disaster that really brought a spotlight to the issues of racial injustice, economic injustice, and the fact that recovery from disaster can also be fraught with inequity, and we can have a man-made disaster after a natural disaster. So we were committed to try to secure equity in the recovery, and there was just an outpouring of generosity. Law students from all over the country showed up on our doorstep without our asking immediately after the storm, and even today, the Mississippi Center for Justice is blessed with spring break, winter break, summer time law students from all over the country. So come to Mississippi.
Yeah, that has to be very rewarding to you when you see that
Yeah.
kind of interest on the part of students.
Yeah, it really was the biggest outpouring of student volunteerism of that sort since the Civil Rights Movement. So I was privileged to get to see two waves of that kind of outpouring of generosity and commitment.
You mentioned the need that you found in Mississippi, and I guess in some respects, that's what you're doing today. You're doing work that tries to highlight the need in your current role with Voices for Civil Justice. And I want to spend some time here talking about what you see, the need, what we can do about it. And so let me begin by asking you about the organization and your role. What are you attempting to do as you're the executive director of Voices? What are you attempting to do?
Well, think about right now, this is National Reentry Week, as so declared by the Department of Justice to bring attention to the needs of people coming out of prison to be able to break down barriers, legal barriers that we have posed to them. And that comes about because both this administration has been very committed to that issue, but also because a lot of advocacy has gone on, smart, strategic advocacy to bring attention to the problems in our criminal justice system over many years. And I think we're starting to see some fruition today, and it's very exciting. What I think we don't appreciate as a country yet is that there's a similar crisis in our civil justice system. More than 75% of civil cases today, one or both parties are in court alone without any legal help. I just don't think there's really much appreciation that that's the case and that that's different from, when I started practicing law. So there's a crisis in the civil justice system, and part of that crisis is the fact that our lowest income citizens have no help whatsoever. If the figure generally is in more than 75% of cases in landlord-tenant courts, in debt collection matters, in most domestic relations matters, upwards of 90 to 100% of people and low-income people are unrepresented. So we've got a real crisis on our hands with very high stakes. I mean, as we've done opinion research to show that that people get it, that, they remember that cop show catchphrase, if you don't have a lawyer, you can't afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. Well, not true on the civil side. So that's the crisis that we're seeking to bring attention to, but we also have a solution to go with it. Civil legal aid is the solution that we want to put out there.
I want to get into that in just a
go
couple of
ahead.
seconds, but if I could just ask a couple more questions on you've described this as broken, the civil justice.
The civil justice system is
broken.
broken.
It's a strong word.
A strong word. It's broken. This is a system that was designed by and for lawyers primarily to help people navigate, proceedings that go with a whole vocabulary of their own that nobody, outside it understands, with forms and pleadings and you name it, but yet our Chief Justices have only, of the United States, our National Conference of Chief Justices adopted a resolution last summer recognizing that there is this terrible, crisis in the civil justice system and calling on every state to do strategic planning and partnerships to start to address this problem.
Yeah, I want to spend a couple moments on an example that you gave, and you mentioned evictions, for instance. And we had in this law school not too long ago, Matt Desmond, who's written a really terrific book called Evicted. It's about his experiences in Milwaukee. You've read the book. One of the things that I think he writes very powerfully about is his experience in eviction court in Milwaukee. How many people who were about to lose their homes, renters who were about to lose their homes, were there without any legal representation whatsoever? And he's really very unhappy about that. Is there some way that...
And he lived it,
Yes, he did,
lived
yes.
with it. For a career-long legal aid lawyer, I had a painful time reading that book. That book was really sort of a civil legal aid procedural. It traces the multiple evictions, serial evictions even, of 8 families who on almost every page as their stories were being told, not only did they have legal need for help in their eviction case, they couldn't get on their Social Security disability benefits. Their welfare checks had been arbitrarily cut because they had missed an appointment with the worker and didn't know about the appointment because the notice had been mailed to their pre-eviction address. So every page, was legal aid is needed here, legal aid, but it wasn't until page 303 that Matt gets to the notion that one of the solutions to this problem is civil legal aid. So he has it as his number one intervention that needs to happen to correct some of these situations, and yet not one of those families had legal help. The idea of legal help doesn't even come up in the book.
But part of the problem is, and I think I saw something that a speech you had given recently, and part of the problem is people don't understand what civil legal aid is. You said your mother for years didn't understand what exactly it is you were doing.
That's right.
And so isn't that a messaging issue?
It's absolutely that. And so my mom used to say, she said, would try to understand what it was her daughter, the civil legal aid lawyer, did. And I would be in the middle of some story and she would interrupt me with, well, now, which one is the plaintiff again? Which one's the defendant? So it took me years to sort of dawn on me that it was the way I was talking about it. Why was I even using words like plaintiff and defendant and preliminary injunction? So I think we're needing to change that, and that's a hard process. We're trained in law school to do it that way, aren't we? So we have to sort of untrain ourselves a bit when we're wanting to be understood by somebody other than a fellow member of the tribe.
You said the need. I think certainly the students in this room have heard it, and their parents have heard it. There are maybe too many lawyers. Essentially, we're seeing the market correct itself. There were just too many. And you say there's so much need that actually you could use more lawyers than the ones we have today.
I think that's true. And I think you're lucky to be, coming into the profession at a time when we are wrestling with the mismatch, really, between the demand for lawyers. As I've said, there are in 75% of cases, people have no representation at all in civil court. At the same time that we're, downsizing in law schools because at those higher reaches of who can afford to hire lawyers, we're not reaching them. So we really do have, I think, a disconnect in the profession, in the industry, that is, so the course correction is here, I believe, and there are going to be many different ways to solve it, but one of the ways is to make it more possible for people like you who've demonstrated your interest in pro bono and in providing services to real two-legged clients, that you have an opportunity to do that.
Let's talk about how you would do that. In your perfect world, if you could change things, and what would you do? What can we do as a nation?
I think there are two key things. One is that there does have to be court reform. Our Chief Justices have recognized that the way we deliver justice in the courts has got to change. There do need to be more user-friendly, more self-help oriented ways to find solutions to problems. Easy to understand forms, information online, self-help centers in courthouses and navigators, and not necessarily lawyers as those navigators. So there are many, and we see evidence of that in many courtrooms across the country. It's just not to scale yet, and it's only being recognized that those reforms need to happen. On the civil legal aid side, there will always be a need for full-scale representation and advice and more intensive forms of service. So there do need to be new ways to invest in those resources. I think we're seeing with access to justice commissions around the country real creative attention to what those might be. And there are all sorts, there are legal incubator programs now in some 40 law schools. There are fellowship programs that I know you all are aware of and looking into, and that Angela helps you understand what's possible out there. But there does need to be greater investment in civil legal aid, and that does come from government primarily. So finding ways to reinvest in or to invest newly in those resources needs to happen as well.
I think one thing that we've seen is loan forgiveness
Yes.
for people. Can you talk a little bit about that and give our students a sense of what really the law says now in terms of loan forgiveness?
There is, as I'm sure many of you know, a federal law that does for, committing to work in certain kinds of public interest entities, an opportunity for loan forgiveness. That law is, under attack. So there is a need to defend that, and I know law schools around the country are coming to the rescue on that. But there's a great, the National Legal Aid and Defender Association did a recent survey and found that some 70% of employees in legal aid programs are dependent on that a form of assistance in order to stay in their jobs.
How do we get more attorneys to rural areas, to areas that simply don't have much in the way of legal representation if you need it?
That's a national issue as well. That's another way in which I think our industry is in midst of course correction. And it's just the case that most of the legal industry has gravitated toward big cities, and there are whole swaths, counties and county seats all over America that have no lawyers in them. So again, some of the innovations have to do with forms of remote service that we're seeing, use of technology to provide that service. Courthouses have been innovative in some places to position self-help resources and other kinds of resources in courthouses. Public libraries are stepping up to be sources of help. So I think that's one of the areas where, the innovation is there. So if that's the kind of thing that interests you to figure out, that's a puzzle that I think the medical industry is seeking to address that, and that the legal industry needs to be following in those footsteps to some degree.
At its root, this is really a discussion about fairness, isn't it?
It is. The value of fairness is the one that most resonates when we talk about civil legal aid. We've done some opinion research there's long time opinion research to show that starting with values is the way we persuade.
Shared values, right?
Shared values. So those shared values are things like fairness and justice, like responsibility and compassion and loyalty. And you start there and then build a common bond with people across different political views, different social views, to try to get across that the fundamental value that underpins, I think, the reason we're all in this room is that law needs to be the sacred thread that brings us together and helps us solve our problems. And when that's not available for people, that's what I mean by our system being broken. When that opportunity for help is not there, that really violates, I think, one of our society's most fundamental commitments.
I want to give you a chance to speak directly to the students.
I've been doing that. Don't
I know. But I mean, in a way that, what's your message to them? I mean, these are interesting times to be a lawyer.
They are interesting times. I've never been sorry I got a law degree. There have been moments in my 40-year career that I've sort of wondered what direction it was going to take me next. But I've always been happy that I've had that experience, under my belt, and that credential to do some really useful things in society. So I hope that you're going to find that to be the case too. But as I said, I think you are at a moment when our industry, our profession, our emotional commitment is somewhat challenged, and that you're going to be looking for how you're going to seek personal fulfillment in that whole setting. But you're going to have real opportunities, I think, to make some change, to do something different.
Describe your career arc for us. I mean, as you sit here and look at the things you've accomplished in your career, the things you're still doing today, what has it given you? I know you've probably derived a lot of satisfaction from the help that you've given to others, but describe it for us. What has it been like?
I could not have been any luckier, I think,
Really?
I think I too came out of law school at a real moment in time. I began law school, I was one of 5 women in my section of 100. There were under 5% women at Michigan Law School when I went there. But very quickly that shifted. I mean, within just a very few years, that was different. So finding my way as a woman was really interesting in those early days. And I think you all have sort of a comparable challenge to move into an industry that is shifting, that your opportunities to do, I think you're here because you have that public interest spirit and you want to find ways in your career to give back and to give of yourself for the betterment of society, and you will find them. So I think for me, it's, I look back over 40 years and I can see the moments at which I had those opportunities too, and I feel just nothing but privileged to have been able to do what I've done.
And in your current role, what would success look like?
Success will look like all of you being able to go out and at your next, Thanksgiving dinner challenge, talking across some chasm of a difference perhaps, to be able to say what it is about the legal profession that matters to you and how you see it as a service to society and how you personally are doing it. I think our community, our legal aid community, doesn't do that very well. We do speak in legalistic terms. We don't say it quickly. We're part of us has, we've been something of our own worst enemy in that regard. So my idea of a good future would be everybody, probably starting at the law school level, having some background to communicate well.
Are you still handling cases? I'm
I
curious.
don't still handle cases.
You don't?
No.
Do you miss that?
No, not really. I had some really good times in the courtroom and went back to it. Was away from it for 15 years. My years in D.C. as a national advocate for justice were not practicing law, and yet going back to Mississippi, I was back in that role. So it's possible to go back and forth.
Martha Bergmark, we appreciate your time. It's terrific hearing from you and hearing your story.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
for making it so easy.
Thank you both very much. I myself think that so much of education involves learning from examples, and to do that we have to have examples or exemplars, and Martha Bergmark certainly is that, so we're very grateful to you for being here today. Let's now turn our attention directly to our students, still on their way to becoming Marquette lawyers. They, which is to say you, have distinguished yourselves in your commitment to some of the best ideals of the legal profession. In particular, even while students, even while concerning yourselves with courses and internships in the community as part of the curriculum, and even with the frequent need to find some remunerative work given the financial exigencies that law school imposes. Even in these circumstances, you have provided pro bono work. The students whom we honor this afternoon have met some rigorous criteria. They have provided at least 50, and in some cases 120 hours of work that has been A, not for academic credit or compensation, B, supervised by a licensed attorney, C, primarily legal in nature, and D, in service of the indigent, those who otherwise lack access to justice, or a nonprofit whose mission is along these same lines. I want to give everyone here a brief but specific sense of the ways that our honorees have gone about this volunteer work, a flavor, if you will. at least of the places and projects. So here are some examples and data. At the Public Defender's Office, 4 students assisted in adapting work from another jurisdiction to guide defense attorneys here in Wisconsin as they determine whether to raise the issue of race in criminal court cases. At Legal Action of Wisconsin, 6 students worked with attorneys to prepare and file complete U-Visa applications for survivors of domestic violence crimes. At the Guardianship Clinic, 12 students helped 12 families with an adolescent with a significant disability who was in need of a court-appointed guardian. At the weekly clinic held at the United States Bankruptcy Court for the Eastern District of Wisconsin, 19 students assisted Chapter 7 debtors and those considering filing for Chapter 7 relief. At the Milwaukee Justice Center Family Forums Clinic, 61 students worked one-on-one with pro se litigants completing pre- or post-judgment family law forms. To give you a sense of that clinic, more than 7,000 people received assistance there this past year. In the Domestic Violence Injunction Hearings Lawyer for the Day project, 68 students worked with 413 petitioners seeking domestic violence injunction orders. At the Marquette Legal Initiative for Nonprofit Corporations, students worked with 72 nonprofits or organizations seeking to become nonprofits. These included an organization running schools and feeding centers in Kenya for people living in dire poverty, an organization using a mobile model to address food deserts and provide nutrition education here in Milwaukee, a group working to promote positive role models and decrease violence among Milwaukee's youth through sports, and an organization providing support to families of those undergoing intensive cancer treatment. And then there is the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic, or as Dean Schultz has taught me to say, the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics. This past year, 220 Marquette law students volunteered with the MVLC, working with 293 volunteer attorneys, about half of them Marquette lawyers, to serve this past year 4,345 clients, 100 more than the previous year, 77% of whom are living at or below 115% of the federal poverty guidelines. To bring that number home, that's just $18,320 annual gross income for a household of 2, which is the average household size that the MVLC saw. And the foregoing is scarcely an exhaustive list. Altogether, 63% of Marquette law students this year involved themselves in pro bono work, collectively providing some 9,702 hours of pro bono work. In terms of new Pro Bono Society members, we have 101 inductees this year, some 4/5 of whom are with us this afternoon. 50 hours constitute a substantial amount of time to devote to pro bono work. We are so impressed and so grateful. And some members of the group, about a third, achieved the additional distinction of 120 hours. In all events, warm congratulations and thank you to all of the new members of the Law School's Pro Bono Society. We will proceed with Dean Schultz's reading the names, whereupon we would ask each individual to come forward, and it will be my privilege to give him or her, that is to say, one of you, a certificate recognizing induction into the Pro Bono Society.
Thank you. I need to take just a moment and say thank you to Dean Kearney and to Dean Parlow and also to Josh Gimbel. It's the vision and significant contributions and ongoing support of the three of you and more that really makes it possible for our Office of Public Service to have as much as we have for pro bono offerings. So thank you. Students, I look forward to continuing to work with so many of you. If you're an ongoing student, I will look forward to seeing you continue your pro bono journey at Marquette. And for those of you who are graduating here in short order and will be sworn in, I hope that I'll see you at the clinics in your new capacity as a lawyer. If you're not in town or if you're not going to come to the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinics, still do think of me as a resource as you navigate pro bono through your career. Think of this event today as a starting point, a launching point from which you continue to have a habit of pro bono that you incorporate into your practice for all time. So we're going to start reading the names, and I will turn first to you. Shannon Alberts. Kelsey Anderson. Jill Offmuth. Charles Biggs. Rebecca Borkovic. Barry Bratz. Sean Brown. Krista Callahan. Katie Sapansky. Mallory Davis. Alexandra Don. Meredith Donaldson. Joshua Dryak. Michael Edwards. Michael Farley. Sarah Farouk. Isabel Faust. Evan Fingert. Corinne Frudiger. Morgan Galusha. Carolyn Garsky. Kevin Garska. Carly Garadz. Alyssa Hahn. Jacob Haller. Jill Halverson. Justin Harrison. Christopher Hayden. Ashley Hurd. Faith Heckel. Blake Heyman. Tyler Helsel. Nathaniel Hoffman. Samantha Huddleston. Trace Hummel. Jessica Jervis. Megan Kaldunsky. Caleb Katz. Alexandra Klimko. Rayanne Kramer. Julian Lacera. Kevin Lassiter. Jessica Lothman. Melissa Maldonado. Daniel Marisan. Cody Marshall. Kevin Martin. Danielle Merriweather. Jason Moore. Eric Peterson. Gabriel Peterson. Josie Chu. Maximilian Rabkin. Annette Rausch. Vanessa Richmond. Shane Rober. Courtney Rowlands. Drew Rosen. Amber Saskowski. Natalie Schifferl. Katrina Seipel. Rexford Shield. Erica Stoltz. Adam Stewart. Bailey Timmons. Catherine Trudell. Samuel Tufford. Adam Vanderwerf. Keith Venema. And Benjamin Walker. Thank you, everybody.
So again, warm congratulations and especially thank you to all of you. This is an event that comes at the end of a long month for everyone, at the end of a long year, and yet, of course, we appreciate that the year is not quite finished and there is the small matter of a few details to be attended to next week. And so we are especially grateful that people would take enough pride in their accomplishments in the case of the students here, or pride in your accomplishments in the case of those of us who are here to congratulate you, including a number of guests, that you would want to gather on this Friday afternoon and drink in a little bit of the spirit of Marquette Law School. I've been dean now for more than a dozen years, and yet when I think of Marquette University Law School, I still sort of instinctively think that Howard Eisenberg, who was the dean when I arrived onto the faculty, is still here. And I think that I can say that because he really is here in a very real sense. The Office of Public Service did not exist at that time. Indeed, the Marquette Volunteer Legal Clinic did not exist when I came to the law school, but the leadership of Dean Eisenberg and any number of alumni, Julie Darnader from the class of 1978 and various others involved in the Association for Women Lawyers, really put us onto a track that we, I believe, have accelerated since Howard left us in 2002. And Marquette University Law School really has become a place that helps to drive forward public interest work in the Milwaukee legal community and even more broadly. The reason that we can do this is, to be sure, a little support that perhaps those of us in the administration give, but primarily it is the work of our alumni in inspiring and leading us and our students who do so much of the work. So it really is no overstatement on behalf of all of us when I say that you inspire us. We're also immensely grateful to the lawyers who work with our students. It is not possible for students to do pro bono work, at least not in a way that complies with the rules of professional conduct, unless they are doing it with lawyers. And we are very fortunate here in Milwaukee and Wisconsin to have so many individual lawyers and also law firms that really do support our work. So there is little more for us to do except to gather in the Zilber Forum and to have a soda or a beer, as you prefer. I do want to say thank you very much to Martha Bergmark for her work, yes, in Mississippi specifically, but more nationally also, as she tries to generate further attention to the important issue of the need for civil justice assistance. I want to say thank you again to Josh Gimbel and the Posner Foundation, to the law firms and lawyers who partner with us, but again, especially to our students. On behalf of all of us in the Marquette Law School community, including those of us who work here every day, but also the ranks of Marquette lawyers more broadly, we admire the pro bono work that you have done while you are students, and as Dean Schultz has already neatly said, we look forward to your work as Marquette lawyers. So do join us, everyone, in the Zilber Forum, and again, congratulations and thank you.